Hi everyone, I want to say that on that day I was there next to Chelsea with my arms around the tree. And it was a pretty interesting case because you might have heard about it. It was the Gandy Trailer Park. They cut down 28 grand oaks, and the city came out swinging and fined them the maximum $15,000 per tree, $420,000. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So, City of Tampa's had strong tree codes since the 1970s. And in 2018 and 2019, a group of people, including Chelsea and myself, worked with the builders in the city to revisit it, and we felt like we did a good job. We collaborated, and we came up with a new tree code ordinance that seemed to be satisfy a lot of people. Well, right after we did that, a state representative wanted to cut down some trees, and they were protected by his local code ordinances. So he did what any normal person would do. He wrote a new state law, basically, in my opinion, on the back of a napkin, and got all his friends to vote for it. The state law was very poorly written. It was very vague. It didn't define a lot of things. One of the problems was it said that it said a dangerous tree. Well, the International Society of Arborists do not classify trees as dangerous. They have a very detailed way of evaluating trees, and when you get to the end of the evaluation and the points are all added up, they have classifications. Dangerous isn't one of them. So it put them in a very difficult position because they did not know how to evaluate them according to this law. There was a lot of ambiguity in the law, and the municipalities struggled with it. Pensacola ended up filing a lawsuit over it. When the city of Tampa fined Miller and Sons the maximum for the 28 grand trees they removed at the trailer park, it went before the special magistrate because they contested the fine. I went to that hearing, and it was very interesting because at one point the arborist stood up and said, well, you had an arborist who said, this is how we evaluate trees. And so the magistrate asked the Miller and Sons arborist, how do you determine a tree is dangerous since there's no official classification? And basically said, if the homeowner tells me they think it's dangerous, that's good enough for me. So the magistrate upheld the fine, and Miller and Sons appealed it to the circuit court. Well, we just recently got the decision from the circuit court, and they upheld the city's fine. So Miller and Sons is going to be fined $243,000 for that. And in the meantime, the state legislature has amended the tree law, the 2019 tree law, and the amendment is a big improvement. And I'll just hit the high notes on that. The original law said the owner must possess documentation. Well, what would happen is someone would call the Tampa hotline, tree hotline, and say, so-and-so cut down a tree and I don't think they had a permit. And the inspectors would come out and they'd say, where's your permit? I say, we don't have one. We use the new tree law. And they'd say, well, show me. And they go, well, I don't have it today, but I'm going to call somebody and he'll give it to me. And so sometimes the documentation was produced after the fact, after the tree was down. So now they changed obtained documentation to possess documentation. So that's a big improvement. They also changed dangerous to unacceptable risk to persons and property. And the removal is, and they can only remove the tree if it is the only means of practically mitigating the risk. So that's a big improvement too. And then one of the most important things is they defined residential property. Because in the case of the Gandy Trailer Park, Miller and Sons tried to say that the trailer park was residential. Well, everybody had been evicted because the property was going to be sold. No one was living there. And it was not a residential property, it was a commercial property. And so that was upheld also. And then the amendment is really good because it defines it. It says it's limited to single family detached, which is good because what about duplexes, triplexes, apartment complexes? So it has to be a detached, single family, and it has to be actively used. So if a house has been sold and they've knocked it down and they're getting ready to build a new house, it's not being actively used for residential. So that is a big improvement. One of the other things that's kind of interesting is that the city of Tampa filed a complaint with the ISA, the International Society of Arborists, against the arborists who approved the the removal of the Gandy Trailer Park trees. And we've got that decision came down just recently, and that decision was really good too for the trees. They said that he behaved in an unethical way and that he was issued a public letter of reprimand, and that letter can be used if there's any future complaints against him. So what had happened is some people have created like a niche market for themselves. I'll say whatever you want me to say. But it was also a company that cut the trees, so they had a financial incentive to say that the tree was dangerous and needed to cut down, because then they got the job of cutting the tree down. So I'm going to put this down, see if I can get the actual. It said your conduct failed to meet the ethical and professional standards as established by the ISA. And another thing that I thought was very interesting in this, and I think is very beneficial, is it said that the practices should include taking steps to contact the city to determine if permits are required before removal. That is a big advantage too, because people were just cutting down the trees. I'm sure you've seen them. They show up on a Saturday or a Sunday, on a holiday. The chainsaws come out. It's just some guy with a chainsaw in a truck, and the tree is taken down. And the city is now saying that every tree that you want to take down, you need to come to the city and find out if you need a permit and find out if it's going to be legal. The city fines the homeowners up to $15,000. They can also fine the tree cutters. I'm hoping they'll make it a practice to do both every time, the way they did with the Gandy Trailer Park. So I really think this amended law is going to help a lot. It gives a lot of clarity to the situation. And maybe one thing I didn't make clear is that the purpose of the law, when they wrote it, was to circumvent local laws. So basically, you could say, I'm exempt from the local requirements because I satisfy the requirements of this state law. Now that the state law has been narrowed and defined, there'll be less ambiguity about it, and more entities will be required to go by the city code. And I believe in home rule. I think that we know what's best for our community, and I think when people work hard to do what's best for their community, that should be honored. So if you have a commercial venture or it's an apartment complex, you'll still have to go by the local ordinances, which is the way I think it should be. I think that's basically the high notes. Bob Whitmore from City Tree, he's going to talk to you. We've been working with the city of Tampa to try to educate people about the tree law, because we don't want homeowners to get fines just because they didn't know. We also want the professionals in the industry to understand that their licenses could be in jeopardy if they are unethical, and that they will be fined up to $15,000 per tree. So we're working with the city right now on an ad campaign to make sure that everybody understands the new rules, because basically no one knows what the rules are in Tampa about the trees, because they changed in 2019 twice, the local and the state, and now they've been revised. So we're trying very hard to get the word out. Bob, do you want to talk about what you've come up with?
So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that if you're going to take down a protected tree in the city of Tampa, you will more than likely need to get a permit. The new tree laws that have been handed down out of Tallahassee basically say that arborists will go in and they will say whether or not a tree needs to come down, or whether it's not dangerous anymore, but what's the wording again?
Unacceptable risk.
Unacceptable risk, all right? So if somebody has a tree that is an unacceptable risk and an arborist says, yes, I agree, they have to get the paperwork, and then they have to present that to somebody who's going to take it down, and also back it up if somebody says, why did you take down a tree? But the bottom line is really that if you don't have arborist okay to take down a tree, you have got to abide by what the city has put in as a law or as a restraint against taking down trees. Now, when Bill came up and said, "Where were you 55 years ago?" I thought he was going to talk about when did the new tree laws start, because Joe Chalura in 1973 had the foresight to say, we are going to protect our trees from being cut down, mature trees. And what that has done for the city, while we haven't been watching, is has created something that Tampa is world renowned for. What you might not know is the city of Tampa has more trees per square acre than any city in the world. In the world. Okay, Singapore comes in second. So if you're going to say, what is Tampa number one for in the world, it is our tree cover. The other thing that you might not know is that we live in a urban forest. Now, cities all across the country look at us for direction on how to take care of the urban forest. And Kathy Beck had been, before she retired, a person that actually helped take care of that urban forest. So today, while we're talking about global warming, and every city on the planet would love to have mature tree cover to keep things cool and to keep things right in their city, we've got it. We've got it without even having to ask for it in the past, all right? It's something you can't just click your fingers and say, hey, we're going to go ahead and create a mature tree cover. Because it can't be done. You can plant as many mitigated trees as you want, and those little trees will grow up fine in about 30, 40, 50 years. But right now, we've got 70-year-old trees that are actually doing their job. And that is something we should really, really be proud of as a city. And that's why tree advocates do what we do. We do it for the city. We do it for the people that live here. We do it for the residents, and we do it for the world, because we are setting an example of what has to be done and should be done in cities. Now, Carol Ann talked about what we're doing with the city. We are very grateful, especially with Bill Carlson and the members of the city council. They have been absolutely open to helping us save trees where we can. We understand that there has to be building. We understand that there has to be progress. But we also understand that progress also has to give us the opportunity to live amongst our trees and actually create an environment that people want to live in. So now with the new state law being amended, thank God, because we were all jaw-dropped when we heard what had happened after years and years and years of going ahead and putting together codes that we all agreed on, builders, activists, arborists, the Sierra Club, everybody. Some guy in the back of a napkin decides that he's going to talk about property rights and just wipe out the trees whenever people wanted to. So the city has been absolutely open to getting the word out about what is going on now and what we have to know. So with the new state law coming in, we are still going to lead with the code. We're still going to say you have got to adhere to the codes of this city unless you've got paperwork from Norbert. I'm going to share with you now. This is a secret. This is a campaign that we've actually presented to the city. It introduces a new headline and it introduces a tagline to get the word out. And the city has been absolutely open to helping us do that. And we're very excited by it. Now what we're going to do is 2 series of postcards. All right, the first is sort of a soft sell. All right, this goes out to residents and this goes out to the reputable builders that are out there. We want you to know that we don't want your not knowing what the law is to take down a tree, take you down. All right, so know the law before you solve. So that is what we want people to know and to adhere to. Now, in some instances, the people that cut the trees, you want to lead with the hard sell, all right? So we want people to know the law before they solve. The reason we are doing this, yes, it's for the trees, and we don't want somebody running out and putting their arms around a tree and Bill Carlson have to come by and frown and say, I really wish I could help you, but I can't. What we want to do is we want to make sure that people protect themselves, residents protect themselves from any fines that might come. We're going to do a door hanger program as well to go ahead and lay these out to people that actually might have trees on their property that might be in danger or might be something that might be susceptible to illegal logging. That's it. I don't want to take up any more of your time because I know people want to ask questions, and it's important that we are up here and we're ready for any question that you will want to ask. I want to thank you very much for hearing us and coming.
We got a lot of hands that came